All right, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the NYREI radio show. I'm here with Michael Pinter from. What are you? Is your office in Lawrence or is your office down the street in another town?
My office is 2 miles away in Hewlett. But those are two of the five towns. So I
Hewlett.
live in one of the five towns and I work in a different one.
I'm gonna have to get down to Long Island one of these days and see your operation because we've met several times, but I haven't been to Long Island in probably 5 years. And
If you come to an island, there's a playoff game. You can come stop by.
you know what? We might have to talk offline about that because they just won last night and I cannot believe it. So anyway, I'm coming today from Monroe, New York. So about an hour and a half from Michael. So we're going to talk about something today that is the disposition part of the wholesaling business in New York, which is basically when you get a property under contract, how to sell your property in New York for top dollar. Because I have made a ton of mistakes. I'm sure Michael's made a ton of mistakes. And now we can both say that our average wholesale deals are well over $30,000. And that's on the wholesale side. That's not on the closing side. That's on the wholesale side. And a big part of that is knowing how to systematically sell your properties to the right people at the right price. So, Michael, let's start with this. When you first got into the off-market game on the wholesale side, what was your process like? Because this was a while ago now.
Yes. So it was about 5, 6 years ago. So let me just explain. Before I really went direct to seller, I was going to auctions, and that was my primary place of buying property. So for 4 years, I went to auctions, and what I thought, and when I went to auctions, I was the only guy there actually taking notes. So I made lists of every property that the real buyers bought, and what I thought when I started wholesaling was that these guys were going to be great sources for me to wholesale to, and I was really mistaken because these guys were not looking to buy from me. I think they had seen me buy enough properties at the auctions that they felt like if I was putting it out to them, something was wrong with it. I think even a few of them even said something, what's wrong with it? Like, why don't you just do it yourself? And they didn't understand the concept of wholesaling because these guys were not wholesaling. They were always going to fix and flip it.
Yeah.
So my process first was to try to go to them. That didn't work. So then I had to develop a list of people to buy to get on a buyer's list. And once I did that, my process was to get the seller to agree to show it, and then get as many people in there in one short period of time. I think I even did like a 30-minute showing, just because I wanted all the buyers to feel like this is something everybody wants, and there's a million people in there, and holy crap. Now, ironically, when I do that, it turns some buyers off, some good buyers. Some buyers were like, this is not for me. Like, I don't want to compete. I don't want this to be a bidding war. I don't want a feeding frenzy. And I've lost a few buyers over that. But having said that, it's still the right way to go. And what you had Todd Toback on your Pave the Way podcast, and he really laid it out as good as I've ever heard anybody lay it out, where if you're wholesaling deals, you need this to be an auction situation. And I have left, and I'm sure you have, we probably left, certainly we both left hundreds of thousands of dollars
if not
on the table because we decided to sell it to somebody who asked us, what's the price, or we had a preferred buyer, and we really could have maxed out on a lot of those properties. So that, as Todd Toback said, and as you agree, in today's world, for sure, having a great buyer, or here's something really even stupider. So I wanted to create a whole system where if someone bought from me, they would get first crack at my properties. And then it was a whole hierarchy, and I thought it was genius, right? Because all these people would want to buy from me to get on my list and get first crack.
Yeah.
But the truth is, none of that matters, right? All that matters on each deal is who's going to pay, who's going to actually close, and who's going to pay you the most money for it. So 100%. Setting up an auction system, and sometimes first-time buyers are going to give you more money than the seasoned guys. So setting up an auction system, which is what you and I do now, is clearly the best way to deal with wholesale properties, for sure.
100%. And that's something, when I got started, I was the best cash buyer employee in the Hudson Valley. I mean, I was a CBE, man. I would go and I would pocket. And I'm not saying you learn from your mistakes.
Absolutely.
At the time, I needed to do it because I didn't have the ability and the resources and stuff. But I would just hand off deals, and I made money. It was definitely profitable. But over time, I realized, I said, if I'm dependent on one person or two people or three people in my business, I am in trouble, because what does Dan Kennedy say? The worst number in business is always one. Okay? One marketing channel, one buyer, one seller, one deal, you're done. So you got to have multiple balls in the air and multiple ways to make money. So, yeah, the whole Todd Toback, I mean, we talk about him on a lot because he's really made a big difference in my business. Just listening to this guy on his podcast, like
that was one of the best episodes I heard. You
yeah,
sent it to me early, and I was like, this guy has got it perfectly. And here's people don't think like so. So let's say
he's a renegade in a good way.
He's great. So the situation I gave you, where I had a few guys who came and saw like 50 people out there, and they were like, screw this, I'm out of here. So you can look at that and go, oh no, this doesn't work. Or as Todd Toback says, who cares? Like, it doesn't matter. You were going to piss some people off. And some of your best people who bought, like I have a guy who bought like 15 properties from me. He's upset, right? He's like, you're not giving me any
Of
deals.
course he's upset. It's
and
logical.
It doesn't matter. He's now buying another property from me. It's not like you can't, the ability to max out on each deal with the highest paying buyer is worth more than keeping people happy. And most of those people who aren't happy will still come and buy from you later.
100%. They're still going to come by, and they're only not happy because they were getting wholesale deals with extra equity because you're friends. And I remember I use a story to drive home this point here. I remember my first wholesale deal in San Diego, this was last year. I got it at I didn't know the market that well. Like now I know the area well, but I got this property under contract and I was like, ooh, 300 is like, eh. So I locked it up, no attorney. And I put it out. I'm like, let me try to sell it for 340 and make $40,000. So I put it out to my list and I just built my list on Facebook. It wasn't that hard. And I had a guy say, hey, if you meet me at this property right now, I will sign the assignment agreement right now for 340. And I'm just thinking like, all right, whatever. Like drove down there.
It didn't enter your mind that maybe you were too low?
No, it didn't. Because I was thinking, I didn't think it was a deal at 300 because it was like in the hood. We signed the assignment deal on the hood, in the hood, like on his truck, on the hood, because there's no attorneys. And I'm just like, holy shit, like that was easy. And then, so we do the deal and I'm just thinking like, oh, he $40,000, whatever. And I'm thinking like, I probably could have sold this for 380 or something. Like, I don't know. So then I find out, I meet the guy, we're hanging out like 3 months later. I have another deal. We're at showing it. And I'm like, hey, whatever happened to that property on Lamar? And he's like, oh, we sold it. And I'm like, oh, all right. So he like bought it off me 340, put it on the market for 415 and sold it like that. And I was like, oh shit. So I learned. So then the next deal I had, this is the same thing. I get this house locked up in City Heights, which is once again in the hood, dangerous area. I wouldn't go there at night for anything. And I'm like, all right, I'm not doing that again. So I said, here's the deal. One time showing, it's from 5 to 5:30. If you're not there, I don't care. Like we're not negotiating. This is the time. And there was a tenant in the property. And I'm like, hey, to the tenant, I'm like, dude, like it's going to be nuts here for like 25 minutes. Yeah. Like it's going to be crazy. Tell your family to leave. Cause there was like in the middle of COVID now in California. So it was a Congo line in this little Spanish style house, Congo line in and out. Everyone's almost like holding each other's shoulders, going through this thing. I'm sitting out there just like, I'm going to max this MFer out. And a day later sold it $70,000, $10,000 over the price. And the guy was just humping my leg for the deal. So the reason I'm saying that is because I could have done that same thing in Spring Valley and probably made 80 to 100 grand, but I was being, hey, you got someone knocking on your door, Mike. So it's all about maxing these properties out, man. You got to max them out.
Well, let me ask you something. I wanted to ask you about that deal on Lamar. So how much would it have cost you to close and sell it? Not much? Went retail.
It would have cost me probably 60K in my own cash, of my own dough. Like to close on it, buy it, put it on the market.
I'm not saying how much cash you would have to lay down. I'm saying how much would you have in expenses by
probably 45,000. Probably 45 grand. Yeah.
It's not such a bad deal that you
it had a bad tenant though in one of the units. It was a duplex. So there was a bad tenant.
So it's not like I've wholesale deals where I knew 100% I can make more money by doing the work or by something, but I'm happy to lay that risk off and take my quick dime over my slow quarter because
100%,
because I'm good. So like even that deal in Lamar, could you have made more? Probably.
Yeah.
But by closing on, but that guy took on all the risk. Like there was a guy in Investor Fuel from Kansas City, and he does a lot of business. not Tony, who you think, and he does about 20 deals a month, and he sells like 8 of them, like a huge chunk, like 40% of business, to the same guy who just wholesales them. All he does is like clean them up and put them on the market. So I'm talking to him, and I said, why don't you just do that? Like, why are you leaving that money on the table?
Yeah.
And he said, because I don't own anything. He goes, if a meteor hits Kansas City tomorrow, he goes, I don't have to think about dealing with all stuff. And like, I'm not sure I agree with him, but I understand what he's saying. I
Yeah.
understand the concept of saying, he goes, I don't have to worry about insurance. I don't have to worry about squatters. I don't have to worry about vandalism. I don't have to worry about landscaping. I don't have to worry about any of this crap. He goes, and I understand it. I understand.
Yeah.
I'm not
Makes
sure
sense.
I would do it. I probably
Yeah.
couldn't. I probably couldn't look at that much money gone. But I understand what he's saying. And like in the deal, like when you said Lamar, you laid that risk off to a guy. You made 40 grand on the deal
Without doing anything.
Right.
No money down. Literally didn't do
You had to
shit.
deal with a tenant. You don't have to put up any cash. You don't have any expenses.
Yeah.
So that's what we do, and that's great.
And 40,000 is a big wholesale fee anyway. I don't care what market you're in. It was a big pop, And I knew because California, it's like just like New York, it's the same thing. Like you're gonna do less volume, but you're gonna make more money because you're not having to chase all these small deals around. But yeah, I was happy for the guy. I said, dude, like, congratulations, man. Like, that's amazing. I'm glad you did. I'm happy we're able to, now we're good friends and everything. But
that guy wants your next deal.
He offered 10 for the other one. I sold it for 70. So we didn't make that happen. I wasn't going to be a cash buyer employee.
But he wants to come back to you for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're cool. Yeah, exactly. So here's something that I've noticed in New York, Michael, that really gives us an advantage as wholesalers versus the other areas of the country. When we're going to disposition a property for maximum dollar and we're going to have the open house and we're going to do the whole system, a lot of people around the country, they are scared that other buyer is going to snake them out of the deal, right? So let's talk about why in New York, A, there's less competition, and B, it is impossible to get hosed out of a deal if you're wholesaling. It's actually impossible because you have attorneys involved. Like, that's the thing I love most about when I get a property under contract here is like, even if I'm trying to wholesale, if the buyer starts to mess with me, I'm like, bro, I got an attorney and I got a fully executed contract and you are going to get your ass freaking smoked.
The buyer or the seller?
If the buyer tries to go behind you and go to the seller directly when you're in escrow, let's talk about that. Because in New York, that allows you to be more of a renegade when you're selling these properties because you're in so much control. It's insane.
Sure. So it really doesn't happen a lot in New York because I think anybody with any experience knows that. But the way it works in New York, right, which is different than all 49 other states, is that the real estate transaction takes place between a seller's attorney and your attorney, the sale.
Yes.
And as opposed to just a standard transaction in the other 49 states between a buyer and a seller. But that simple transaction that happens between a buyer and a seller, where there's a contract pushed across the table, where there's maybe a deposit given or not, is not a super strong contract. But in New York, where a seller's attorney prepares the contract, negotiates with your attorney, they each make their $2,000-$3,000 fee. That contract is ironclad. You cannot. So a seller can't change his mind and say, sorry. And a buyer can't go around and say, hey, I'll give you more for it. It doesn't matter. So I had a situation last week where seller, we went to contract at 330 and seller decided it was too little.
Too low.
Too low. I want more. So I told my attorney, like, we're not, I don't care what he says. Like, I'll sue him for specific performance and I'll put a list pendants on the properties. I can't sell it to anybody else. And we close when we were supposed to close. So that's an amazing thing about New York. But also because of the reality that we just discussed, I've put properties out there where I wasn't in contract because I knew that all the buyers I was showing it to knew that on all my other deals I were on contract. And therefore, I'm almost not afraid that one of my buyers is going to go direct to my sellers because if I'm sort of implying that I'm under contract, they're not even going to think about it. But in places like Dallas and Phoenix and
it's Vegas,
it's just like that they try and finagle their way in. That's their thinking. Get on a bunch of lists and try and middle out the guy who's direct to seller because the contract with the seller is weak. We it's a huge thing in New York that I never really understood and never really but I took for granted until I started talking to people in other parts of the country.
Yeah, and I used to think like it was a pain in the ass to get into contract in New York, which it like I'm just so used to it now. Yeah,
it is. It's a bigger pain in the ass than other places.
Yeah, well, it's funny. I just lost a deal because of this. My first, it wasn't a deal. Basically, this is an interesting story. We had a smoking hot like unbelievable deal, like home run, home run, home run. It was from another investor. And we got the yes. And I'm like, dude, I'll buy it with the tenant. But if the tenant wants to leave on their own, that's fine too. The tenant's like, I'm going to leave on my own. I'm like, oh, great. Seller's an attorney. So the seller is a like smart, savvy guy, lives in like by Bal Harbor, like not a moron, which is in Miami, if you're not familiar with that area. So he's from New York, but he lives in Miami. And I'm like, Saul, why are you selling me this property for 150? Like, dude, like you're an attorney, you're smart. Like, I just want to know like why you're doing this, because like I don't want this to be an unproductive use of my time and your time. He's like, I just don't care about it anymore. I own so much real estate. I just don't really care. So I'm like, whatever, cool. So he actually wanted a big deposit. So we put a big deposit down, signed the contract, and he calls me the other day, or I call him and I'm like, hey, we have the deposit down. He's like, I'm not selling you the property anymore. And I'm like, what's going on? He's like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to sell. And I'm like, was it the price? Tell me if it's the price, because I'll pay more. And he's like, it's not the price. I don't want to sell. So I'm like, all right, whatever. But we weren't in contract, right? But if this was Dallas or whatever, he probably would have signed that contract right away. So maybe one out of 10.
Right. Then just jerk you around after.
Yeah.
Nothing you can do before a guy.
There's nothing you can do about that. Yeah.
That's
right. That happens maybe twice a year, Michael. I'm not kidding. Maybe twice a year that'll happen. Like it always
barely. You know, that happens everywhere. That happens. People change.
It happens in other markets too.
For sure.
Yeah.
Sure, but
it's even worse when you get it tied up. Like that's like, I've had that happen in Dallas before, where I got a smoking. We had a, once again, absolute, bases loaded grand slam. And the lady went off the rails, and we tried to litigate, and it just didn't work. Like, so I ended up getting $1,000, but in New York, it would have been done. So she would have been done. So it just makes me grateful for
the fact that the seller has an attorney in New York means that seller's attorney is going to tell his client, listen, you got no place to go here, right? You don't have an option. You got to close, because A, you're never going to sell it to anybody else, and B, you're going to get sued for a lot of money and you're going to lose. So that's a big deal. Like a lot of people that are unsophisticated in other states, they don't have anybody telling them that.
No.
Right? If your contract is ironclad in another state, or whatever you did, you filed it, you recorded it with the county, whatever you did. No one's telling them, hey, you need to sell it to this guy. But every seller's attorney knows you don't have an option. You got to sell it to this guy.
For sure. So Michael, what are some things you did in Long Island to build up your buyers list to where now when you have a deal that's actually a deal, you're selling it in a matter of days?
So what did I do? When I first started building the buyers list, I went to a multiple listing service, and I downloaded every property that sold with cash.
That's the best thing to do, for sure.
And then I skip traced as many of those to get names and addresses, and I sent out a mailing. That helped me build the buyers list. I'm actually doing another mailing like that now from a different data source. So that was good. But also what I have my dispo guy do is that when we have a deal in an area, he starts looking at people who bought properties in that area, and we reach out to them. So we specifically say, hey, you bought something in Huntington Station. We have something in Huntington Station you might be interested in. So that's what he does. Unfortunately, doesn't spend as much time building the buyers list as I like, because there's no real compensation. There's no direct compensation for adding people to the buyers list.
Yeah, it's not a sale. Yeah.
Right. So he spends more time on selling properties, because that's what he really
a direct revenue generating.
I keep trying to convince him that, hey, that leads to the more people you get on the list, the more money
you're going to make. Yeah.
But it's hard for a lot of people to do that. So I'm doing another mailing right now of like 500 people who just bought something, and in the last 2 quarters, and basically it's a simple letter. I think I have it on my wall. Yeah. Look at it. Here's the letter. See, it says, my name is Michael Pinter. We market for motivated sellers. Find properties for sale, never be on the MLS. I saw that you recently bought a property, and this was Elmont. I have an off-market property in Elmont for sale. I was wondering if you're interested in buying another. Give me a call, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
that helped me. That helped me a lot. What are you doing to build your buyers list?
So there's a few things I'm doing. The number one thing that I did actually to do this in another market, but this applies in New York as well, is I actually had a deal that I was about to put on the Lamar Street property. The seller and I were kind of, going back and forth for a while, and I knew he was going to sell eventually. So I went on a Facebook group. So this works in Long Island. This works in the Hudson Valley. This works anywhere, San Diego, wherever you are. And I went in the Facebook group. It was not a real estate investing group. It was a local real estate professionals group, right? So there's agents, investors, home inspectors, everyone in there. And I made a post. I said, hey, I have a property in Spring Valley on Lamar Street, or not on Lamar Street, a duplex in Spring Valley. I'm going to be getting under contract very soon. I'm going to look to sell this property to a cash buyer immediately once it's under contract. If you want to consider buying the property, leave your email and I'll let you know when it's available. I got 75 emails in like an
Wow.
hour because it was like, it's an easy offer. So that's how I built up my list in California. In New York, MLS. So my assistant goes on and she uses PropStream in the MLS to go and she looks for all of the cash buyer sales. And she does the same thing that you do. But another thing that I had her do, and this is another strategy I want to talk about after we're done with this listing, is she finds every real estate agent who has represented a cash buyer. And she takes the real estate agent's information. She sends them a cold email saying, hey, I work for an investor. He has a ton of properties he wants to sell. I saw you sold a property down the street. Can we basically stay in touch? And then he has properties every single week that he wants to sell. And then basically she adds a lot of agents to my list. And we do a lot of business like that. Like we just had one yesterday. That's how it went down. So that I get a lot. I'll make blind ads. I don't know if I don't even care if it's frowned upon because who the hell, who cares? But basically I'll go, actually, this is not frowned upon. And even if it was, I don't give a shit. So basically I'll go and I'll get a deal under contract, right? Very normal. And I'll write some crazy Dan Kennedy copy, like, holy shit, I need to sell this property right away or else I am in big trouble.
Right.
It's an off-market fixer. It needs a truckload of work. I'm
Wait,
dying to get rid of it.
where
Like
you posting? Where you posting the ads?
Craigslist,
Craigslist.
Craigslist. I'm dying to get rid of it. If you're interested, only text me. And I'm like, I'm very specific. It's like hard hitting copy. And I'll get a bunch of people reaching out to that blind ad. And the only thing I will say is generally it's sold, but I'll leave the ad up because I want it to run in perpetuity. And the first thing I say is, what's your email address? And then I stick them into my active campaign database. So blind ads,
You
prop
want to
stream.
get texted. You want to get texted, and then you'll respond to the text with what's your
Yeah,
email.
I'll basically I'll see the text come in and then I'll say, what's your email address? And then they have to give me their email address and then I'll boop, boop, paste it over. And then that's a great way to build that. I mean, a lot of now that my list it's not like 10,000 people, but it's like 400 real, legitimate, actual productive people. And that list gets passed or not, doesn't get passed around, but people will take the emails now because I send so many of them and they'll send them all around to their networks. And now I get random people hitting me up for a deal that will sell. And I'm like, I'll cross-reference their email address and they're not on my list. So then I'll put them on the list. Right. And then in my emails, it's always like, hey, PS, this isn't for you, but it's for someone else, forward them this email. So we get a lot of boomerang marketing going on.
Yeah, I get some of that. I get some of that too. Yeah, that's good stuff. I see. I really need. So I recently took my list from 1,000 down to 600 because I had 400 people on it who really were not.
They were just full of crap. Yeah.
In my opinion, if you don't respond to a text and an email that says, "Hey, I got a great deal,"
you're smoking. Yeah, you're
probably
not.
You're probably not a real buyer. So I cut it down, but I want to build it back up. But again, I think I have a pretty good list. I think you're sure you have a good list. So, but it's something that you really need to spend time on regularly.
It's important. And that's a bigger thing. I see some guys say, oh, screw the buyer's list. I agree and disagree with that because I think that if you have nobody on your list and you have a deal, you're not going to get as much money. But at the same time, if all you do is spend your whole day building a buyer's list and you're not getting any seller leads, you're wasting your time too. Get any money back. Yeah. So it's kind of like on the fence. I'm on the fence about that. I think you are as well.
I'm not on the fence on it.
You're not.
Very strongly that because when I heard about this concept of reverse wholesaling, it sounded so great.
Oh, it sounds great in theory.
Oh my God, if you find exactly what the buyer wants, then you just go out and get it for them. It sounds amazing.
So easy, Michael.
But to me, it's an excuse to do something very easy. And so there's a few problems with it, right? And I've spoken to so many people who say, oh, I'm just building a buyer's list before I start. Here's a few problems with it. Number one is, if you call somebody, let's say off a list or whatever the hell it is, and you say, hey, I have an ability to make you money. Do you want to be on my list? Anybody's going to say yes. You don't know if the guys are real.
I get those calls all the time.
Right.
I get those blind calls all the time. And I'm like, yes, send me all your deals.
Right. Okay. Sometimes I don't even know if I say yes because I know what the guy is doing, but I'm saying anybody will say yes, but you're a real buyer. Yeah. You're a good guy to have on the list. I know people who have done this and they got 20 guys and I know none of those guys actually can even close on a deal. So you don't know. Second of all, you feel like you're accomplishing something, right? You feel like, hey, I'm building a list. I'm doing exactly what I saw on the internet. Somebody told me to do.
Yeah.
And the truth is you don't know if you've spent any time. The tough part of this business is talking to sellers who are going to tell you to go F yourself, 9 out of 10 times. So it's a way to avoid that. And I see people like pushing that part off, just telling me, I'm a wholesaler for 2 years. What have you been doing? I've been building a buyer's list for 2 years. I got 78 people on there who all want. So, I'm ready to go. I'm like, you haven't spoken to one seller. You really haven't done anything you should be
You're
doing.
done. Yeah.
People get shocked. So I feel strongly that if you get the deal, you'll find the buyer. And it might be something as simple as calling up you or me and saying, what am I doing here? Like very often people in our area don't even know if a deal is a deal yet. It's not so simple.
It's one of the hardest parts in New York, by the way.
They go on, they go on online and they see somebody in Port St. Lucie tell them, well, if I can buy it for $70,000, it's a deal, because everything there is similar. But by us, our product is so diverse. It's not so simple, right? We have product that was built in the 1800s. We have product that was built 10 years ago. There's a very diverse amount of diverse amount of houses, different types of houses. So a lot of them need help from somebody like you or me just to figure out if it's a deal, and then to find a buyer for it. So you're spending time on a buyer's list. I think it's a waste of time. Talk to sellers, find deals, work with somebody in the beginning, at least like you or me, who can help you figure out if it's a deal and then help you dispose of it. Totally. The whole buyer's list to me is something you can do that later. Like even if you get a deal and you're not talking to somebody like you or me, you could just look on MLS for everybody that bought properties within a mile of there. Just find those guys and call them. Skip trace them and call them.
It's so easy to find a damn buyer. And there's because your inventory as a wholesaler is the distressed seller's property. It's not the buyer. Like there's no resistance finding buyers. And that's why people don't like doing it. There's no conflict. There's no uncomfortable. Right. It's like, hey, do you want to smoke and deal at a discount? No, I'd rather just go to the bankruptcy court.
I don't want to make more money. No.
Yeah.
Don't call me.
Yeah, it's like that's like those stupid DMs you get on Instagram. It's like, dude, if you send me another DM, I'm calling the attorney general. It's like ridiculous. So, it's like, do you want to learn Forex trading in your underpants? It's like, no, I don't. And if I did, I wouldn't be learning it from you.
You've been missing the Bitcoin.
Oh my gosh! I hear the word Bitcoin, I just get stressed out.
Crypto is hot.
So is Arizona. It's like, get the hell out of here.
Yeah, so I feel like, and I tell people this all the time. I go, do not spend any time on a buyer's list. Get the deals, and then you'll find the buyers.
It's so easy. I agree with you.
The two things I see people spending time on that really should be done after deals are getting your financing in order, finding the money, and finding the buyer. And I tell everybody, if you find the deal, I promise you, the money will be there and the buyer will be there. If you have to close it, the money will be there, and if you have to wholesale, the buyer will be there. Whatever it is, don't worry about those things. Just talk to sellers. That's it. Just spend time on sellers. You got to learn how to do it, and then you got to talk to sellers. That's it.
A good deal solves all problems.
100%.
A good deal solves all. I'll give you an example on that. This is a deal. This is not even in New York, but I just want to use it as a general example. I did a mailing in Cedar Rapids, Iowa last year to see if these small markets had a huge response rate. I just tested it out. I'm like, let me try this. I got like 2 properties under contract, and I had a buyer for one of them in the matter of 3 days because it was a good deal. It had title issues and it didn't end up closing. But I literally started with the seller I didn't know anyone in that area. I didn't know anyone. I knew that there was farmers and farmers and plants and stuff.
How'd you find buyers?
I went on PropStream. I went on PropStream, but then the way I found this guy was Craigslist. Like it takes 2 seconds to make an ad on Craigslist and you will get buyers coming in on autopilot. Focus on the sellers.
Right.
That's the thing. Focus on the sellers. So one more thing I want to cover on today's Disposition podcast, and I'm sure you've done this too a little bit, is I have found that using real estate agents to help sell my wholesale deals has been tremendous at least in the Hudson Valley, which is 2 hours from where Michael is. So we're not too far apart, but we're really kind of in different regions of the country. I have found that a really good agent that's actually doing business, that's not a part-timer, they're not like learning how to make money, like they're already making 6 figures a year, they're serious, they're not BS. I have found that they have found buyers for me that I was not aware of, and I've paid them a 2% commission, but I've made an extra $15,000, $20,000 on my deal. Yeah. So we have been finding a lot of success doing that. In fact, a deal that just closed yesterday was the same thing, right through an agent. He had a guy didn't overpay, but he paid a good price for it. And I didn't have to do anything. The agent took care of most of it, So if you're new to wholesaling, you want to also build relationships with agents who are very productive agents. Like in my opinion, they got to be making 6 figures minimum. They need to be doing it full time. They need to
It's hard to know which agents are doing that, but I guess you can look in your area.
You could just tell, like, if they're selling like, 40 properties a year, like there's a pretty, like, and that's what I mean by like, if they're making like 97,000, like you can still work with them. But that just shows me that they're used to making a good amount of money in real estate, like versus like someone who's like never made that type of money. They're like, oh shit, like they don't have the experience most likely. So there's a few reasons. Number one, they can sell your deals for more money a lot of the times. Number two, I like to pass a lot of my leads over to these agents because I'm not a licensed agent myself. So I'll pass them a lead that's pretty hot, but they're just not selling at a discount, and I'll get a marketing fee for that. And they're just good people to work with in general, like for tenants and things like that. So
Sure.
what have you been doing that type of stuff in Long Island, Michael? Or you just kind of go directly with your list?
So first of all, I am a licensed.
You are a licensed agent.
I'm a licensed broker, and my dispo guy, my full-time disposition manager,
he's licensed.
He's licensed too. What I did do recently is something similar to that, and what I've been noticing now is that there's a lot, because of the eviction moratorium, there's a lot of properties where the seller needs the money, he wants to sell it, but is under the impression that because I was a non-cooperative tenant, he can't sell it. So I got a list of every single realtor in my county who has an office in my county, and I put out my whole team. So I have a few VAs and my leads manager and my dispo guy started emailing them, like a simple email saying, listen, if you have a property we'll buy properties with uncooperative tenants. And I just got 2 deals from it.
That's amazing.
One was a realtor who's also a property manager who had this situation where the tenant's not uncooperative, but the tenant still is under lease for like 2 more months, and the seller just needs cash, and I'm buying it for like $150,000 less than it's worth, and the property manager is going to make it in perfect condition. I went there; it's got a pool, it's really nice.
That's amazing.
And the other one is where they also just a mess. They got some uncooperative tenants, and I'm buying it for a really good price. But for a lot of these agents, they don't understand that there is actual people like you and me that will buy properties with uncooperative tenants. Like I had people call me and say, I don't have anything now, but do you really buy properties with uncooperative tenants during a moratorium? And I go, yeah.
Yeah.
I go, listen,
I've done it twice.
I'm not giving you full price. I'm not giving you full.
Yeah.
No, I've done it 10 times now.
Yeah.
But like it's like a whole new world to them. Their mind is blown. So like I didn't want to send them the same email that everybody sends them saying, hey, do you have any properties? I'll buy it in any condition as is. Closing.
Yeah, because they're getting that from everyone.
Right. So
there's no resistance with that.
One message. We'll buy properties with uncooperative tenants. And it got me 2 deals in like a week. It's crazy.
That's amazing.
And we're sending out more and more emails to them because I think it's great.
Yeah, my assistant's been doing that recently, and she's gotten a few responses. But we just got to keep sending more emails. But yeah, I mean, listen, like the way I look at something like that is like, now you got 2 deals from that. How much did it cost you to acquire those 2 deals? Zero, because your VAs are going to be working anyways.
Zero. It's amazing.
Exactly. And that's where I see a lot of people, like a lot of new investors are like, they're scared to work with a real estate agent. And I'm like, dude, their whole entire income is based upon buying and selling and renting, which is how you make money.
They don't get paid unless the deal is done.
They don't get it, whether that's a rental tenant or whether that's a freaking buy or a sell. I mean, because we have both. Like they need to understand, like that's like a good agent is going to be like super proactive on getting it done because your interests are actually aligned.
Right.
Especially when you're wholesaling a deal. They're only going to get paid. We have a deal right now in San Diego, $55,000 assignment. We're going to hopefully close next week. The guy's making $7,000. Like he's making $7,000, which is great.
Great.
It's funny. He's definitely not listening, but I will say something that got me a little ticked off. I said, hey, dude, I've never worked with you before. This is a pretty big assignment. It's not like your typical 10, 20K. And he's like, I don't care. He doesn't care. I don't care. I'm like, all right, whatever. So he's like, send over the assignment. I said, okay, I'm just letting you know. It's like at the doctor, the shot is going to hurt. I'm going to put it in your arm. It's going to hurt. So he goes, I email this freaking guy and he goes, oh, you're making 55. I'm like, I fucking told you I was making. He's like, well, he's like, I want more money. I go, the fuck, you told me you were cool with $5,000. And he's like, I want more money. I'm like, all right, fuck, I'll give you $7,000, but don't ever ask me that again. So like I caved in, but like it's fucking guy. But anyway, the point of that is that guy brought me the buyer. I didn't know the buyer. I had another buyer lined up, but this guy brought me a buyer with more money. He's on my list. He's like, hey, Greg, I'm an agent. I got buyers. Look at that, right? You could do that in any market. That happened to be in California, but you could do that in too. Same shit. I actually had that happen like 3 weeks ago in New York. So
It happens. I don't do it enough, but I think that the thinking that a lot of new wholesalers have is, number one, a lot of them are talking, like being taught to talk crap about realtors,
that's
like,
the most
which is so stupid,
asinine thing I've ever heard in my life. By the
ridiculous.
way,
And they're taught, oh, you don't want to use a realtor; they're going to rip you off. These guys
oh
are,
my God,
which is
who the
stupid.
hell's teaching that, man?
I never do that. And the other thing is, I think they feel like, well, if I have a realtor and the buyer is going to pay the realtor's commission, I'm not going to end up with more money. But look at what the realtor brings you. The realtor can bring you deals where you make you more money, right?
100%.
Even if you have to pay the realtor, if he's making you $20,000 more and he's
Who
taking
cares?
10, that's $10,000 more than you were making without him.
100%.
That's what
100%.
I
People
think
are crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then like the thing is too, the realtor does most of the work. Like that's like in California, like the escrow company does a lot of the work. Like the attorney in New York does most of the work. Like some of these title states, it's like, yeah, it's great, but at the same time, like you're going to get the death certificate from the department of whatever for the inherited property. It's you're going to get the payoffs from Wells Fargo, which I've done before, is a pain in the ass.
I hate that stuff.
When you have to get a deceased owner's payoff, you might as well just go eat glass because it's that bad. Oh my gosh, you have to like lie about the freaking. It's just a disaster.
You need to know the social security number. It's
God,
terrible.
Disaster.
I've done that many times, unfortunately.
Yeah. So let's wrap up the episode. So like in summary here, like just for the people listening, so they can have some takeaways from this. Number one, don't be afraid to sell your deals for the most money possible. Because if you have a good deal and you have a list that is reasonable, you're going to sell it for the most money. You just have to have the cojones to not cave in and take the first offer that comes in. You got to be willing to be patient, and you got to be willing to ruffle the feathers and rock the boat a little bit, because you're going to have guys try to be, oh, hey, I need to be at 250, like 250. Let's do it right now at 250. And it's like,
what's your number? What's the number? What's the number? Just tell me what it is. What do we got to do to make this deal?
What do we got to do to make? So the thing with that is like when that happened last or 2 weeks ago on this, we got $20,000 in New York, locked the house up. We got 20 grand over our asking price. So it's a 40K fee. And I had guys, dude, what do we need to do? I'm like, listen, dude, submit your best offer. I'm taking the best offer at 10 a.m. tomorrow. That's the bottom line. And if you don't like that, that's fine. I'll send you another one next week and maybe you'll buy that one. So you got to be patient. And if you're new, it's hard to be patient. I would advise partnering up with Michael or myself and having us do the deals with you if you'd like, because number one, you'll see how it works. And number two, I guarantee you we're going to get more money on our list than you'd get on your list in the beginning, right? That might change as you do more deals. Yeah, you got to be patient. You can't be afraid to, wait around for the best offer.
You can't be afraid to piss some people off.
100%.
You're going to piss some people off. Like I'm still thinking of that guy who came out of his truck. He looked in and he was like, F this, I can't do it. And at the point, I'm like, maybe I'm doing something wrong.
No.
I made a ton of money on that deal, and I wholesaled it for top dollar. So the fact that he's pissed off is not something you should worry about.
I know why he's pissed off, because he thought he was going to go. See, the thing is, the buyers who, like, I have done this before with buyers where like they were trained to where like when Greg gets a deal, they were going to like get a call. And then I was 20-year-old kid. Like, what do I know? And I remember I started to realize like, man, I could probably just get 30,000, 40,000 instead of 15,000. And I'm like, no one's like pointing a gun at my head saying like, if you don't sell me this property, like you're going to jail. So then I was like, well, fuck it. I'm going to just try to sell this for more money. And it started working. And I was like, whoa, okay, now I'm onto something. But in the beginning, you got to do what you got to do. But at the bottom line, our main points of this episode are: number one, in New York, it's actually better to dispo properties because you really can't get snaked out because of the attorneys. And number two, you got to be willing to get the most money for your wholesale deals, especially in 2021, the time we're recording this. Because if the market changes, it might be a little different. But right now, in June of 2021, this is the hottest real estate market in the last like 20 years. And Michael's been in the business way longer than me. I mean, what's the deal with this market, by the way, Michael?
It's all-time highs where I am.
All-time highs.
Unprecedented. Like there are areas in Long Island where things are up, by 30, 40% over what they were a year ago. It's insane.
Unbelievable. I'm seeing a lot of stuff in Long Island where guys are just buying properties at like a 2-1. Like I see the Charles Weinrab guy all the time. He's buying like a 2-1 piece of shit Cape in like, what the hell's that town called? I don't know the town, but right by the Coliseum. And he like turned a 2-1. He blew the freaking top off, blew the back off, and turned it into like a 4-3 monster and sold it for like $100,000 over asking price. And I'm like, holy shit. Like That's
Yeah.
crazy. You know, like
Right.
that's what's going on in this market. You know, there's just people are willing to pay.
Forget about doing major work. I mean, what people are just, I mean, even when you don't do any work to it, you could sell
You
it
still
for
make money.
$100,000 more than you thought. It's crazy. It's crazy.
It's crazy. It is crazy. But anyway, always a pleasure doing these episodes. I hope you listeners got value from today's show. I definitely think if they take what we are telling right here for free and apply it, they will make a lot of money. Pretend you just paid Michael and I $50,000 each to hear this advice, because he just heard it for free. So
if you want to send us the money, you can.
Yeah, you can definitely can. We'll send you our PayPal, respective PayPal accounts or my Stripe account. But anyway, we'll see everyone on the next episode, and we'll talk soon.